This is the plaintiff, Daniel Torres. He says the defendant, his coworker and roommate, owes him for 6 months' rent and is a pothead to boot. When he confronted him about it, the lunatic flipped out on him, cursed him out like there was no tomorrow. And now that he's moved out, he can't get the $2,400 he's owed. This is the defendant, Edwin Valenti. He says he was extremely uncomfortable living with the plaintiff because he was a belligerent drunk who would engage in screaming matches with a girl he knew. He can't believe the plaintiff's actually suing him because the guy tortured him in his own house. And for that reason, and that reason alone, he owes nothing. He's accused of running out on rent.
Thank you, Douglas. Okay, Daniel Torres, you
Yes,
are
Your
suing Edwin Valenti, your former roommate, for $2,400 in rent from January through June at $400 a month because he abandoned a lease that the two of you had signed together.
That's correct,
Tell
Your
me
Honor.
what's going on.
Well, to begin, I guess from when I met him, we met through mutual people at work. It came about that I was looking for a roommate to renew my lease with at my apartment. I've done multiple leases in the same complex, and he was interested, so we met. He came, he saw the apartment. He agreed. We then later went and signed a 15-month lease. The entire time we've been working with one another. He doesn't have a vehicle. He came with next to nothing. The whole apartment was completely furnished by me. I mean, everything that you can think of. I even got him a bed. I gave him clothes. Since I have a vehicle, I was our ride to and from work. It started with just little stuff as far as his, as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, just his irresponsibility and his lack of financial responsibility. He was short on stuff. I had to cover him at times, but it really started to get rocky when I had asked him because, as you know, he habitually smokes pot. You know.
How do I know that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that you were informed of that.
I mean, I'm listening and
Yes,
I
Your Honor.
read, but how do I know that, as you know? Okay,
I
go ahead.
apologize, Your Honor. I'm trying to cover everything and not
That's
leave
all right.
anything out. That's one of his habits. It's something that he does, you know, every morning at work, even at lunch. He's one of the guys that goes and hops into a car, and that's what they do for lunch, on breaks, at home. As far as at the house, I'm respectful, and he was always respectful at home. He would always ask me if it was in a common living area, you know, is this okay? You know, yes or no, but it was never an issue. The only problem that I ever had, and I asked him from the very beginning, was if I'm gonna transport us to work, I ask you to never have any drugs or anything on you in my car, which he agreed to. Later, obviously we worked together, so I caught him lying. I know he had stuff on him, and obviously I'm his ride to and from work, so I know that he was lying to me because of that. I first threatened him and I told him that it was never to happen again. He did it again, and that final time I waited until the end of the day once we were at home. We got home on our own accord. And I calmly told him that I was no longer going to be responsible for him, taking him to and from work. And he immediately flipped out, became irate, you know, started bashing me with a bunch of names. And that's when he first made his comments as far as saying that he was going to abandon the lease and he would just quit our job and just leave me stranded. I left the apartment after that for a few hours. I came back later when things were calm. We didn't speak. When we did speak, he apologized for everything. Anytime that we'd ever had any sort of heated argument, which were on a number of occasions, and it continued to get rockier after this instance, we would always, you know, talk face to face in person until there was a resolve that was met on both parties' end. And at a certain point, this was really the breaking point as far as the drugs being brought to and from. When I told him I wasn't going to take him anymore, I thought that things were fine after that, but I'm sure that he still harbored resentment towards me, during which we did not communicate at home or at work. We didn't talk about work at home and vice versa. We didn't even talk at work just to keep things on a civil level. But after this matter, it just became real uncomfortable and we would just almost not even speak when we were at home. So it came...
Who brought up him moving out?
He did.
And he told you what?
He told me that he was going to leave.
During that fight?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then when did he actually leave?
He left, see, we had another instance after that, but he actually left in October.
Which is how long after that fight?
2 months, something like that, maybe a month or 2 months.
Did you know he was leaving when he left?
Yeah, yeah.
He gave you how much notice?
He came, see, on a Friday, our bills were due, and I was always the one that handled the monies and made sure everything was paid on time, and I remind him ahead of time. I'd let him know that, you know, X bill is due on this date, this Friday. We get paid weekly every Friday. So come Friday, obviously I'm not taking him home from work or to anymore. I'm already home. He makes it home. He's supposed to have his bills. He's short $30, $40 for whatever reason. And at this point, I'm done hearing reasons. And I just told him, I was like, it's irresponsible on your part, and I'm tired of it. So he then goes back into his room, comes out with crumpled dollars and change, and he throws it down on the coffee table at me. And I told him I wouldn't accept it. He went back in his room and closed the door. And I went back, opened the door. I set the money down on the nearest article of furniture there. And I told him, I was like, listen, I'm just sick and tired of it. You are just completely irresponsible with the money, and I'm tired of it. And then you wonder why I'm always reminding you about things. That turned into a heated yelling argument, and he left for the weekend. He returned on Sunday, and well, before he left on Sunday, he actually went into the kitchen. He made a big commotion so that I would see with his door open, grabbed trash bags from underneath the sink and started filling them with clothes. And I asked him what he was doing, and he said, nothing, I'm just cleaning. So I told him at that time, I can gather from what he was doing, what he was planning, because he'd already threatened it in the past. I told him, I said, if you're planning on leaving, this is your decision. I'm not kicking you out. At no point have I asked you to leave. And I expect that if you're going to leave, that you need to uphold your end of this by either continuing to pay the rent and
Okay,
or
let's
filling
stop
the
talking
room.
about what you told him, and let me ask you what he told you. When did he finally tell you, I'm leaving?
The following Sunday.
All right, and
Your Honor.
so he told you, that's it, I'm out, and I'm moving out when?
Sunday. I'm leaving that day. He came home on Sunday and said that.
So that was what date? Do you remember?
I mean, it was in October. I couldn't tell you
In
the exact
October.
date.
And did he pay November?
He did.
Did he pay December?
He did. That was the last month that he paid.
So he paid November and December?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Did you make any effort to find another roommate?
Absolutely, and I have proof of it, Your Honor.
Okay. Show me the proof that you have. How do you have it?
I have a copy of, unfortunately, I've gone through many different avenues, even other coworkers at work, but I think I should have learned from this instance. I had to put it on Craigslist in the end, and you can imagine the weirdos I've gotten from there. However, I've made numerous attempts. I've had two people that had come, met me, seen the apartment. We shook hands, agreed that they were going to move in on such date, and they ended up flaking out on me.
How much was he paying you in rent?
$400 a month, Your Honor.
But you put it in the paper for more than that. You put it in the paper for $500.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Your
Okay.
Honor. Excuse me.
All right, but okay, so the idea is that you're trying to stop the bleeding, which means you should put it in the paper for $400 so that you can mitigate your damages.
Yes, Your Honor.
You're putting it in the paper for 25% more, and you weren't able to rent it, but you're asking 25%.
Well, it was completely furnished as well, Your Honor. Since he left, I've filled the room with more furniture. I mean, it's anybody that moves in doesn't need to have anything other than their clothes and their toiletries. And I even provide the toiletries, like, everything to clean with, toilet paper, paper towels, and such.
So your version of these events is very different. Tell me your version.
Okay, try to keep it concise. I moved in for the first 6 months. Frankly, after the first two, I realized it was going to be a nightmare.
Why?
I find, frankly, I find the pot smoking and the pacifying of that light in comparison.
You find the pot smoking, which I guess you are agreeing that you do, and the what?
I find that him pacifying that, for me, light in comparison to the things that I put up with during when I
what was
moved in
worse
there.
than conducting
drinking.
illegal activities in
Yeah.
his apartment?
The drinking was
Drinking.
outrageous.
Okay. Because according to you, he is an alcoholic?
Just like every weekend, it was just, I started just getting ready for it. Like that guy who gets super drunk, has no respect for personal face, and, he's in your face going, woo, yeah, trying to get you to punch him. He has several places on our road alone that he's been kicked out of because he walks out of bar tabs.
Oh, you said something in your answer to the complaint about him yelling at women.
Yeah, that was one of the things that was kind of like the last straw on the camel for me, is there was this girl, that he brought over, and for 2 or 3 days it seemed like it was just nothing but a non-stop shouting fight between the two. Walls are paper thin. I know the neighbors above and below us could hear us. And according to him, I had absolutely no right to tell him to keep it down, even though I did pay half the bills. And, that one time, yes, I was short $20 one time on rent. And for the following 3 months, I even paid my rent at the place that I lived at, as well as my half of his rent. So all of this, all these financial, troubles that he's talking about having, I'm not really sure how that,
Is this the only proof you have that you're trying to mitigate your damages? Proof that you put it in Craigslist at a higher amount, 25% more?
I have receipts for you. I can show you proof of the, I mean, of the bills that I've paid on my own since he's been gone?
No, because that's not in dispute. See, here's the thing. You guys have an agreement with the landlord, okay?
Correct.
You're both on the lease with the landlord. The landlord won't let you out of the lease because why would he? I mean, if the landlord has two people who he can sue, he wants two people, not one person who he can sue. So unless there's something in it for him, he's not going to let you out of the lease. But that's one contract. The contract you come into court and sue on is a different contract. It's the verbal contract that exists between two parties when they agree to rent, two roommates, when they agree to rent a place together. The verbal contract between you two is it's going to be a 15-month deal. But that is not holy and sacrosanct and unable to be changed. If in fact the thing is getting to be unlivable, which frankly you both testify that it's impossible to live together, then people are entitled to live in a place that's livable, where you guys can live with each other. It's not as though he walked out of the lease and then didn't pay any rent. He continued to pay rent for 2 more months. And you have a duty as the plaintiff to mitigate your damages. And that means make a real effort to get a roommate and not get too picky or decide that you want 25% more. It's really bad for you that you're showing me something where you put it in at 500. Maybe it's worth 500, but you have to kind of put it in at 400 and get a roommate to stop the bleeding. That's your responsibility as the plaintiff. In this case, he continued to pay without living there for 2 more months. I believe that 2 months is a reasonable amount of time to find another roommate. Go ahead, I'll let you answer that.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Harvey Levin here. So this is a little bit heavy, but can roommates coexist in the same apartment when one does drugs and the other doesn't?
Yes, if they have separate rooms.
Yeah, but there is a living room, right? So can they coexist?
No.
And you say that because?
Because one would get really upset with the other.
I guess the question is, would one tolerate it? But after a while, what do you think?
I think it would be a little bit impossible for 2 people to live under those conditions.
I do too.
Yeah.
Over time, I do too. Going inside the courtroom.
In regards to the amount that I was asking, again, I was trying to do nothing more than get myself out of this hole.
No, you were trying to make 25% more by asking for 500. Getting yourself out of the hole means putting it in for 400 so you can just get a roommate and then stop the bleeding. That's precisely what I find you weren't doing by virtue of putting it in at 5 instead of 4. I'm finding that even looking at it in the light most favorable to you, which is, that he walks off, he still, you still have the obligation to mitigate your damages.
Yes, Your Honor.
So no one can sit back. A landlord, for example, if you guys both left the apartment, the landlord can't sit back, put their feet up, and then never try to find somebody to rent that apartment, and then say, oh, by the way, you owe me the last 8 months in rent. Landlords can't do that. You're in kind of the same position. You have to make an effort to mitigate your damages. And the man did pay 2 more months to give you a chance to do that. And I don't find that you tried to do that, and my verdict in this case is for the defendant.
So it's a question of mitigating damages, and the plaintiff didn't do enough. So step on in here. What do you feel about that verdict? You understand the judge, right?
I do understand the judge. I wish I was given, another opportunity to answer some more of the allegations and the questions that were stated. Nobody could tell you without you actually being there. I've made numerous attempts to fill the room. He'd made no attempt, and I feel that it was his responsibility in a way as well to help me fill that room, which he agreed to and he shook my hand on when he left the apartment. I didn't come here to try to make, more than what I think that I deserved.
Okay. Follow Officer McIntosh around the corner there. Perhaps he should have put it in the paper for a little bit or online for a little bit less than 500. What's your feeling about the outcome here and how this went down?
Frankly, even I feel it was a little brief. There was a lot more that could have been.
Well, you won. What more do you need to say?
For sure. Yeah. I'm pleased at that.
What made you think that you two were a good match at the beginning when you first moved in? Why did that seem good to you?
Because when you go into the apartment, it looks the way it looks like it's ready for a showing every day. The apartment was beautiful. He seemed like a great guy. It's just that there was no manual for what would come to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Harvey?
So the judge talked about minimizing damages. In legal terms, it's called mitigating damages, which everybody has a duty to do. And the plaintiff in this case can't just raise the rent and then try to get a windfall. Because he didn't do the right thing to minimize his damages, he loses. That will do it for this case. Litigants for the next case on the way into the courtroom right now.